Hey, how's everybody doing? Pastor Sam and the Gospel Gunslingers live from Chiapas, Mexico. Believe it or not, if you looked at the opening slide, I actually drove my Jeep down this street 25 years ago. Take a look. It's all steps. It may have been the next street, and they're big steps. It's very difficult to walk up and down, to tell you the truth. And then look how far down it goes. Yep. It's all steps. My famous command vehicle, it had like, I don't know, 32-inch tires, not like super big mudders, and it was a Wagoneer. It wasn't, a Wrangler. And it did all right off-road, but not a rock crawler. I drove it down this street. Yeah, things we got away with when back in the day when we were young. I don't know if you can see that sunset. It's really pretty here. Yeah. That's actually the south. That way's west. A little bit of rain's coming in. It's a beautiful evening high in the mountains. I wanted to talk just a little bit about being a missionary and what it really is versus what people think it to be. So I'm going to brag a little bit because there's just no other way for people to understand what it's like other than telling a few war stories from the cutting edge. It's not something I'm really comfortable with, but it's something that the apostle had to do. 2 Corinthians especially is where the apostle comes in and boasts. And so I'm just going to tell you, and it's really not about me. It's about what God's done with a life laid down over all of these years since I first drove my Jeep down this street. That was kind of a defiant act. At the top of this street is the Catholic Church, and they just bogarted the hilltop. And so I felt like I was trapped in a maze, trapped in a labyrinth, and it was not fun for me. And so we took a little bit of drastic action to get out of that. I think if any of you felt trapped, you'd be ready to break through a door. So I kind of did that, driving down the street. I had trunks and luggage in the back, and it was all bouncing up and down. There were little indigenous people, women with their shawls and their braids, and they were all looking. It might have been one street over or one street the other way. There's a few of these that all terminate in steps. Part of the reason I felt trapped. So on my radio show, which just played, I don't know if you watch Living by the Sword with Pastor Sam and the Gospel Gunslingers, but it's every Monday night and Tuesday. There's a replay into Latin America. You can get it on Substack, gospelgunslingers.substack.com. If you listen to shortwave and have a shortwave receiver, you can hear it as it airs on a couple different stations on Monday night. In all the continental U.S., we may actually go to a 5-night-a-week live show. We're seeing if that works out. Of course, I got to have some backing come in. And one of the boasts that I made, and that's what I wanted to tell you about, is I mentioned on the radio show a week or two ago that I was just wearing the final tread life off of probably my 50th pair of military boots. The Mormon missionaries, they shop very carefully, and there's a whole industry of Mormon missionary shoes so that they can hopefully make it through their 2 years without having to shell out for another pair of shoes or buy them on the field. I like to buy them on the field because I can get a Mexican-made boot that no Chinaman has ever touched. There's no unknown chemicals from the other side of the world. Things that come from China have no environmental or health controls on them, and people that I know have been made very sick by footwear that had Asian parts in it. So knowing that the leather comes from Mexico, that everything's made Mexican manufacture, I really like that. And some of it's very good quality and long lasting. I've gone through a lot of American brands too, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about that boast because it's the reality. It is the reality. Even a soldier, when he deploys, is gonna, in a tour of duty, go through 1, 2, 3 pairs of footwear. And for those of us that have stood the test of time, I don't know that I've made 50 exactly. I'll tell you this, I've lost count. We're probably beyond the 40 mark. 50 is a likely estimate in all truth. And that's since I went to preach on the Mormon, we're not Mormons, on the foreign field and left behind, sneaker wearing, except for sometimes in the gym or on actual runs, I'll wear a sneaker. But as far as daily drivers, even for dress events, sometimes I wear boots. It's just once you've been out in it, it's hard to go back. It's hard for people that have been in military service, which I've not, to get away from the short hair. These are just things that, stick with a soldier sometimes for their life. Sometimes they have a habit of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning, unreasonably ungodly in total darkness. They'll wake up every day. And those are some things that after someone has been to the battlefield, they never put behind them, even when they're old men. And so I just want to share a little bit about what it is to wear out. And I'm not a walker. I mean, when hunting season comes around, or if I'm actually deep in the jungle like I am now, I mean, here I'm in town today, but out there, we do burn the proverbial shoe leather. So I was talking about dress shoes. So I wear cowboy boots and dress shoes. One pair of boots that was really nice, a benefactor bought for me, and they were alligator skin black cowboy boots. And I put 4 sets of soles on them and 3 sets of heels because the heel pad wears out. And I had a fresh shine on them, and I gave them away. And those were a real prized possession of mine. It was a sacrificial gift. But one thing that I'd asked the Lord for that year, I said, Lord, I would like you to give me the honor of winning to Jesus a Native American and a Hebrew-born, someone who was born in Jerusalem. Just a crazy thing, I said to the Lord one day. And lo and behold, both of them happened. We were out preaching at rainbow gatherings deep in the American forests, and I picked up a hitchhiker, and it was a Native American, and I led him to the Lord right on the spot. Only drove him 20 miles up the road. He says, "This is the spot," and I let him out, but he was a new creation when I let him out. Okay, so the other thing, a Hebrew kid joined our camp. Maybe he was 20 or in his early 20s, and he hung out with us and listened to what we had to say, but he was a little standoffish. He just didn't fully believe that we loved him. And before he left, one day he got ready to pull out of our camp, and I reached deep down in my duffel bag, and in there I had that pair of cowboy boots wrapped up. And I pulled them out, and I just held that boot up. And he, at first look, knew it was a $1,000 boot. I didn't pay that for it because I got them in Mexico. But exotic skin and everything. If it was a Tony Llama, that would have been probably a $3,500 boot. And he knew that. And I said, try this on. Fit like a glove. His foot just slid in with a snap. And I said, these are yours. I'm giving them to you. It was a gift he really didn't want to accept, but he needed them. And he knew that I was determined, that I'd thought about it ahead of time. So he took those boots and went his way. And not long after, he gave his heart to the Lord. So that's just one pair of the 50 or the 40 or who knows how many. I generally, at dress events, wear cowboy boots, but my dad always did. But I also wear Oxfords, and I can sometimes get Oxfords that have ankle support and are built like a boot. And I tend towards those. But I've also shown up in boots and ruined a few black tie affairs, or shown up in a matched suit with a fresh shine on a pair of military jump boots, just because that's what it is. You can only sometimes come out of the field so far. Anyhow, I wanted to show you these. I was going to change them out. I just haven't gotten up to that point. Sometimes when we're dead in the water, what we do is, so the door has not opened up for the change. Maybe we'll change. There's the back torn out of this one. I'm going to turn on the light on this other phone so you'll be able to see this properly. Coming right up, coming right up. All right. These look like hell. If I went ahead and paid my $1.50 to put a shine on them, they'd still look good on the outside. Nothing's torn out on the toe. But both of them are torn out on the back. Can you see that? This light is really fighting me. And that's real leather. It just ripped. It's coming apart here. Those stitches are coming out up here. It's got some tread life on it, but they don't bite very well on a muddy mountain slope, which they're so steep here, it's unbelievable. You see it's coming loose right there where my thumb is. And where's the eyelets that are coming out? That may be on the other one. I only took one off. Now I didn't pay as much for this pair. For about $60 American, I can get a really nice pair of Mexican manufactured boots. Let me see what kind of life my insole's got in it. I may swap. It's pretty much done. Yeah, that one's pretty much cooked. I don't know. I could go a little further on it, but it's pretty much cooked. These do help a lot. How you doing? A lot of people speak English here. It is the Wonderland that I described in the opening. Because of what was going on here in the 90s. In fact, there was a tour about how liberated the transsexuality and the LGBTQ is. There's some terrible graffiti on the wall. I gotta put my boot back on to show you. And I'll do that. So, I didn't mark a lot of Bible verses for you today. Just want to tell you what it is to be out here, because a lot of people have a gilded view of what it really is to be out serving the Lord. Maybe it'll start to rain on me here. Then I would really have entered into the Lord's sufferings, wouldn't I? All right. So when I get a new pair, and I was going to do this on camera for you, but I don't quite have my act together yet for that. First I'll swap out my insoles, and then I'll put in a fresh shine. I'll have a guy oil and then put on, a top coat, a wax coat. And then I take my water bottle and pour half of it in each boot. Then you lace them up tight. The British Special Air Service will piss in their boots, lace them up, and then go off on what they call a yomp. Forcefully break them in. For me, that's kind of gross. And it's also a lot of human scent if you're going to hunt at all. or you don't want to be tracked. It's a lot of human scent. So I use water. The hiking trick is to lace up your new boots and then either step into a pan of water or a creek and soak them through and then walk them dry. You want to quit before you get a bunch of blisters because that kind of defeats the purpose. But if you can get a few miles in them, the time is more important than the distance. So you want to wear them all night or all day or on a long ride or drive, or even wear them to bed, and they'll conform to your feet. And then I'll put my insoles in them. So that's the process, is you put them on, tighten them up halfway, get a shine, and then dump in the water. And then you want to lace them up pretty tight. And then after that, I'll swap in my new insoles. So that's the process. And I can't tell you how many times I've been through that. Beyond counting. And after I started into construction, which is how those of us outside of the church world, you know, Hebrews 13 talks about suffering, the Lord suffering outside the gate. And it says, let us go forth, therefore, unto him without the city, bearing his reproach. There's a point, even in our own walk with the Lord, if we're not preaching, there's a point where we have to get outside of the city of religion, and we have to put behind us the comfort of our civility, of all the relationships that we've always relied on. I was going to show you some of this graffiti, then we'll get back to our War Daddy phase. So this is a communist paradise. And because there's all this American money, European money coming into this town, everybody thinks that communism works because they've got that transfusion effect. Let's try to get just the right angle where you can still see the sunset because it's really pretty. All right, there we go. Hopefully it won't fall. We give God glory. Yeah, so that's one boast that I put out on my radio show, is that I was just burying my 50th pair of military boots. One pair I had was vintage Corcorans, which are, and their jump tube got me. It's vintage, but probably 20 coats of kiwi on them before I ever touched them. And he could not believe it. A couple of winters, they got pretty raw. But I took those to the cobbler, and you know, had been told that was a lifetime boot. And the cobbler just shook his head and he goes, "He's got some kind of sentimental value for you." He goes, "There's really nothing I can do with these." So we learned that there is no such thing as a lifetime boot. And it helps if you got a few different ones and you can swap them out and let them air out a little bit, not have them in use every day. But for the soldier out there with his ruck, that's not an option. And you just go with what you got until the wheels fall off. And hopefully you could grab a pair off a dead guy, which is showed up in the true story from the 101st Airborne and the Band of Brothers and a lot of other places. The Book of Eli, he scores a pair off a dead body. Not at all uncommon in the battlefield. Really, you get out far enough or deep enough in a combat zone, there's just no footwear to be had. It's just a reality. It's one of the things that runs out. One of the things people can't get a hold of. All right, so my other boast was about the pretty girl looking at me. That's on this week's show, week 73, if you want to get in and hear it. And I'm making these just because, for whatever reason, people don't understand what it is to be a disciple, what it is to be out doing the Lord's work. And on one hand, it's not that big of a deal. On the other hand, all the creature comforts are left behind. Well, most of them. All right, so the pretty girl looking at me. It was an extremely dangerous situation because coming from a native village that's really tight-knit, everybody knows everybody knows that girl. There's a lot of guys that have liked that girl forever. And if that girl gave attention to me, it would have been a shit storm beyond belief. And so I knew that, and it was not time. It was not time to be talking to any pretty girls. You know, one thing I did, she stole a peek at me when she thought I wasn't looking. And I just let her look at my profile, which I did not like my profile when I was, 20 years ago. I didn't like my profile when I only had one chin, right? And I just let her look at the full scarred, worn, war daddy visage of my appearance. I kind of thought that would scare her away. And as many people would say that I see myself as one of God's generals today, first, I don't. Second, I really don't like the term. It was coined by Robert Lairdon, who wrote the book God's Generals, and his only qualification, his crowning qualification, was being able to suck the chrome off a trailer hitch. Finally came out in the end what he was really about. I would say I see myself as a grizzled sergeant in the Lord's army, the real people who fight wars and win them. One night at the Trump rally, I waited all day with a master gunnery sergeant from the Marine Corps, the very highest stripe that's available, highest rank in all the Marine Corps. Of course, one person of that rank becomes the senior enlisted, but as far as earned rank, there's no more. I mean, this is one guy out of 10,000 or more. His name's Francisco, and he actually ran for the sheriff of Rock Island County, right across the river, the armpit of the Quad Cities. They shitted him out of it, they cheated him. I wish that hadn't have happened, because he would have really cleaned that place up. One thing that Americans need to think about is to never elect a cop for your sheriff. You find somebody who's a real American and knows something about fighting and winning. And Francisco, I believe Martinez, would have been the guy, but they just frauded him right out of it, just like the Don. They wasn't fair and wasn't right what they did, and so they got another guy, same new boss, same as the old boss. But having spent the day with the master gunny, I learned a lot about who he was and what he was. A senior enlisted soldier, Marine. He had a little, what they call a pineapple on his, it was stripes all the way down. I've got a picture of him. someplace, him and I, at the rally. And in the middle of those chevrons up and down was what they call a pineapple. Really, it's a bursting bomb, but as the bomb sprouts, it looks like the top of a pineapple, and it's an embroidery, so there's only so much resolution. But that bursting bomb will put fear into the heart of any Marine on any base or in any battlefield around the world, because they know that that guy is the guy. Not an officer. Technically, he's taken orders from, junior 21-year-old second lieutenants. But at the same time, the first thing that lieutenant is told is to believe his senior enlisted. And he's going to go into battle with men that are, a lot of them in their 40s, and have been soldiers, have been in all their life. And the young lieutenant is told to listen to those people and to not fight them, and to find a way to collaborate and to compromise, because without them, they won't ever get anywhere. So War Daddy was Brad Pitt's character in the movie Fury, where he's a Sherman tank commander, and it's a little raw and a little violent, but largely accurate. Portrays in reality the horrors of war and some of the emotional challenges, which if people were better prepared for them, they would do better in the Lord's service. So I let that girl look at all my crow's feet and wrinkles and scars. And you know what? It didn't scare her at all. Well, there's a point. There's a point where people realize that is what they need. There's a point where people realize that this is the only way out. They got to find the guy with the Pathfinder patch that says, "Follow me." And they got to follow that guy. Just a few thoughts. We're going as a world into a place where people's security blankets are going to be snatched from them. And then what? How will you do? How will you fare? The Luke 10 example is awesome. But when you are a fugitive, 2 countries down in Central America, they're rounding up the preachers. They got the Gestapo on the streets rounding them up, looking for the miracle workers. And when that is the case politically, you cannot be out on the street accosting every person saying, excuse me, do you have any pain in the body? You can't do that. You have to pray where to be, and really pray if you're going to talk to somebody. And it better be the word of the Lord. I mean, to open a conversation when you're under the gun. Am I the only person that has studied tradecraft and spycraft? Maybe so. Maybe so. Because there's a generation right now that's clueless. And they think they're going to go evangelize the world with Google Maps and WhatsApp and Airbnbs. You're going to die. You're going to die. And a lot of people are going to wind up in the prison ministry. And all that is avoidable if we look at the word a little bit of a different way, or if we look at the whole counsel of the word and don't just take one little pat answer, scripture, and make it our life. This is why I've been so harsh about the Luke 10 model colliding with the Luke 22 model. It's in the same gospel. Jesus sent out his disciples one time when there was a special grace for peace. And then he moves to the Luke 22 gospel, where they were expected to be ready to fight to the death. That's why they were commanded to take a sword. So this is the reality, friends. It's the reality. We have to become a little bit battle-hardened. Have to become a little bit battle-hardened. And because I'm that way, a lot of people don't like me. They didn't like me when I first got to the Christian university. And my background, I grew up in the karate dojo. I grew up riding motocross bikes. I grew up in the pool hall. And the whole incest-affected class of Roberts Lairdens hated my guts. They hated my guts. You think I look old and scarred, man. When I was 35, I went to my hometown, and everybody looked like Santa Claus that I'd gone to school with. They had drank themselves into oblivion and were gone. They were geriatric. They were old people. And so I think another thing that I bring to the table is the ability to teach people how to be survivors. You can be a survivor in the harsh environment. You can dance in the dark. You can learn to overcome. And as the judgments of Revelation begin to come on the land, these are the overcomers that the Lord is going to need and that the Lord is going to require. He's going to need a lot of war daddies. And he's going to need some young people that have their hearts turned to the hearts of the fathers. And he's going to need some fathers that don't disdain youth so much as to entirely discount it. A guy just rode up on a motorcycle. I was wondering if he was going to ride down the street. Nobody's going to ride down this street. But I did. But I did years ago. And now it's a different and more dangerous world. I look back on that like I wouldn't do that today. Only in a dire emergency, and it would be something out of a movie. You see that in movies where they get in car chases on the streets of France, and sometimes they'll go down a very narrow street that's stepped like this. These steps are, some of them, a foot high. As I remember it, some of them were even higher. Once again, it might have been another street over. You know, all around here in the jungle, even though this is a hippie paradise, with Americans and Europeans coming here to live on the cheap in a socialist wonderland, all around in the jungle, it's Christian villages. They do not have the hardcore Romanism and the hardcore militant communism. You still see some activism, but even the communist guerrilla movement has lost a lot of what was disgusting about it back then. They still look up to some people that I would wish they wouldn't, but the gospel has affected all the surrounding areas. It's just this core that is. It's San Cristobal de las Casas, Chiapas, and it's a nice place to visit. You know, you can come backpack through here and see a lot of cool stuff and drink some of the best coffee in the world. There's probably a cool club and cafe scene and live music scene and all that. So that'll be fun if you want to take a look. Certainly people from all the US and Europe are here. A lot of them, though, come to live the hippie dream. It's kind of funny that we've won the battle, that only in this core is that secularism and socialism still extant. Well, thanks for having a little bit of patience with me in my boasting. Send me $1 if you can. Hit the button on GospelGunslingers.com. There's a PayPal button. There's a Give, Send, Go button. My mailing address is on there because a lot of times we only have one step lit up and then we're waiting for the next one, right? And very often it doesn't come because nobody cares. And that's another thing that we have to become accustomed to, is that there is not this huge network of love and support and prayer intercession. It's just most of the time, it is the lone wolf that gets the job done. That's how this region was changed 25 years ago. All right, y'all. God bless. Have a great day. Go catch Living by the Sword if you haven't heard today's episode. It's a lot of fun with ZZ Top. All right. Have a great day. Bye.